is Brandon Royval the 125 Max Holloway? He put on a torrid pace and actually came into second all-time in strikes for a single fight. Number one is Max Holloway when he fought Calvin Kattar. Now, there are a bunch of differences between Brandon Royval and Max Holloway. Namely, he doesn't switch stances like Max Holloway does. That said, the volume, the pace, the durability, and the inability to check leg kicks are exactly what makes me think that Brandon Royval might be 125's Max Holloway. Now, granted, he's not nowhere near as good as Max Holloway as a fighter. His record's nowhere near the same, and he's lost his title shots. Max seized those opportunities when he had the chance, or seized that one. Maybe Royval just is running into more than one Alexander Volkanovski. So, if you missed it over the weekend, UFC Mexico was a really fun card. You had Brandon versus Brandon. You had Yair Rodriguez versus Brian Ortega. Really kind of hurt my feelings there. You had a whole bunch of fun fights on this card, and we're going to be breaking down a couple of them today. A little late. I had some things to attend to this weekend, so it's just going to be a couple of them. We're going to blow through these pretty in-depth and pretty quickly. So, main event, Brandon Royval versus Brandon Moreno. Number 1 versus number 3 in the flyweight division. And this fight delivered. So think about it. We're in Mexico City. We're at altitude of over 5,000 feet. And these guys are supposed to gas. Both of these guys fought very hard until the end of the fight. Think about that for a second. Moreno, he's just a dog. And then you had Brandon Royval, who went and trained at elevation at 8,000 feet, 2,000 feet higher, a mile high, to get ready for this fight. Pretty clutch. And these guys put out the volume. Now, granted, Brandon Royval was the man with the volume most of the fight. And that's actually what ended up getting him out there to get the win for this fight. But at the same time, Moreno didn't slow down until that very last round where he's clinching and Herb Dean's like, hey, get some action in when they just clinch. Like, that was absurd. So, Brandon Royval, what he does good, and what he did good in this fight was, first of all, he's long for the division. 125, he is a flyweight, he's a small guy, and he's long. He's lanky, he has these long legs, the long limbs, and he knew how to use it. Now, as a southpaw, something that Brandon Moreno really isn't used to as much as like a switch hitter like Davison Figueiredo, he really decided, I'm going to give him troubles with my length and my jabs even longer because the right hand's forward, and that open matchup, that southpaw versus orthodox matchup is really, really tricky for someone who's not used to it. So if you think about it, like Brandon Royval is a southpaw, and he's used to sparring with as many orthodox fighters as he wants. He has a plethora of them. I'm guaranteeing you Brandon Moreno probably has some good southpaws, but nothing to train with like Brandon Royval has that's orthodox. It's just right-handed fighters are way less common than left-handed fighters. So that gave Brandon Royval an advantage. Now, in boxing, you'll talk about the outside foot advantage. We didn't see that too much early in this fight, but Brandon Royval did start to go deep onto the outside foot. So in the southpaw versus orthodox matchup, the two lead foots are the Royval's right foot is forward and Moreno's left foot is forward, and that gives that classic toe-to-toe look. And the guy with the outside foot, so they'll have 2 feet and one guy will go to the outside like that. He usually, that's known as the outside foot advantage. Now, it's not like a hard fire rule or anything like that, but it's like people like Manny Pacquiao thrived with the inside foot advantage. So you don't have to get to the outside every time, and Royval was just showing that. And to be quite honest, he didn't need to with his length. But at the end of the fight, you start to see he double jabs, gets a real deep step on the outside, and started landing a couple more shots when he got the angle. This is when Moreno wasn't as agile, was a little bit more tired after the fight. So yeah, if you go back and watch, I think round 4 he did it, and then round 5 he tried to do it once. Got caught in a clinch, I believe. I don't remember. But yeah, it was he's not a typical southpaw, so he's not going to go out there and bang the outside foot advantage like most boxers. As a matter of fact, like in MMA, you don't see that quite as often where there's an outside foot advantage and you're trying to go and get it. No, there's the wrestling to worry about. The open side body kick's a big weapon for both southpaw and orthodox fighters in a southpaw versus orthodox matchup, and it ended up as Brandon Royval taking advantage of that with the open side body kick. Now, Moreno, he will switch stances, but he will fight predominantly out of orthodox, and he did that in this fight. So, Royval, another thing he did really well, he has that step-up knee where his left knee, which is his rear knee, remember, he's southpaw. Brandon Royval started to throw the jab and time the dip. So Moreno, being the orthodox fighter, throws that, and he dips to his right. Royval picked that up, and he said, oh, I'm going to knee him in the head. And he threw that a couple times. It landed. It didn't land clean to change the fight for Brandon Moreno. But, I'm sorry, it didn't change the fight for Brandon Royval. But what it did do was say, hey, I can knee you in the head. Stop dipping. Now, let's move on to a little bit of Brandon Moreno, because I love the guy. He's so contagious and happy of a person. He's on a tough skid. I mean, the guy's just taking on the toughest of the toughest. He's fought Pantoja 3 times. He's fought Figueiredo 4 times. And now he's fought Royval twice. Hasn't fought Cejudo, who called him out after his fight. I kind of like that shout. Obviously, he didn't fight Mighty Mouse, which would have been cool. But, like, he's fought a who's who of the modern, of the recent meta of flyweights. Brandon Royval's changed since those 4 Davis and Figueiredo fights. I've done a big breakdown on Sherdog about Brandon Moreno and that whole matchup. It's 2 parts. It's the first 3 fights and then the 4th fight. He used to do a lot of straight punching, a really good head movement. We saw some good head movement in this fight from Brandon Moreno, but like he punched, all these punches were looping over the top. I don't know if it was Brandon Royval's length that gave him problems, or if it was the southpaw stance, or maybe it was a combination of both. But Brandon Moreno is not punching straight anymore. He's looping over the top, and he winged these punches over the top. And, I mean, granted, he did catch Royval on the end of some combinations, and he did catch him with that overhand right several times. He caught him with a left hook several times. But Brandon Moreno doesn't have knockout power. He's not going to go out there and knock you out with one punch. He's the type of fighter that is going to wear you down, and when he knocks you out, it's going to be because he's been working on you all night. Here, he didn't really do that. He's looking for one big shot at a time, looping punches. Towards the end of round 3 and onwards, he discovered if I throw a low kick at the end of these combinations, I can land on here. I can land these kicks at the end of this. And if he would have started that earlier in the fight, that could have really helped him out, because obviously we know Brandon Royval, news broke today that he tore his MCL during this fight in like the first minute. And the commentators did mention, hey, he just shook his leg out. Something's up. We knew something was wrong early, and they talked about it the whole fight. So Moreno and his team didn't pick that up. He didn't smash the legs as much early as he wanted to. In fact, it was Brandon Royval who was kicking the legs of Brandon Moreno, not the other way around when it should have been. So Moreno looping punches and not enough low kicks. I mean, he's dipping and he's moving his head off to the side, but that almost got him in trouble with those knees that we talked about a few minutes ago. But Brandon Moreno, he's changed as a fighter. Like the Pantoja fight, he didn't quite look the same either. He's winging punches and stuff. If I'm gonna have to go back and watch, because like with Figueiredo, I remember him like just punching straight. Obviously, he did throw the overhand rights and stuff that when he needed to. I don't know if it's the style matchup that Figueiredo brought. I'm going to have to go watch a lot of his fights. But even like against Kai Kara-France, it was a straight punching that got it done for Brandon Moreno. So what changed? I mean, he's 30. He's not like ancient. He's a little older for flyweight. But he's not like end of his career old. You know what I mean? So, yeah, sad performance for Moreno. Split decision, I don't think should have been called. I thought that was a clear as day win for Brandon Royval. But all in all, fun fight. I don't think we see Royval versus Pantoja next, especially with that MCL tear. Pantoja trying to defend next month, which is wild, at UFC 301. Not next month. No, yeah, it's UFC 301 after in May. So he's trying to see what happens this weekend, and he was watching the fight. And I mean, he's beat these guys. Like they went to Pantoja, and he was like 5-0. Like he has 5 wins over these 2 guys and 0 losses. So like, You can't put Pantoja against Royval because he's hurt. Moreno is coming off of a loss, so you can't do that. I do like the Henry Cejudo fight if we're going back to 125 for Cejudo. There's no way Brandon Moreno moves up to 135. He's just too small of a fighter. So you got that, but then you got Mokaev fighting this weekend, and he's wanting to be a champion young, and I don't know. Tough situation. I don't know. Actually, it's 301. No, it's in a month time, that fight. I think it's UFC Sao Paulo. They're trying to go down there or something. I don't remember exactly which card, but there's a Brazil card coming up, and Pantoja wants to fight on it. They need a Brazilian headliner, and Pantoja's your champion. Alex Pereira is headlining UFC 300. So, yeah, let's see what happens with Mokaev this weekend. If he looks good, then we book him. But, yeah, so good fight. Very, very good main event. I don't see any of these guys getting a title shot. Either of them. They need another couple wins or Pantoja gone. So, yeah. Next fight on the card was Yair Rodriguez and Brian Ortega. And, boy, this was the most Yair Rodriguez fight you can ever see. The dude is a maniac. He likes to go out there and just be crazy. And in the first round, he was beating the brakes off of Brian Ortega. Like, you could tell this fight was getting away from Ortega in a way that could have been very, very bad. Knocked down twice in the first round, and Rodriguez was on top. Not really worried about playing inside of Brian Ortega's guard. Like, is this dude toast? Is Brian Ortega done? Because Yair Rodriguez was showing no regard. And he did a good job. So Brian Ortega is going to look for the triangle. T-City, which is the worst nickname in the UFC. Regardless, he's going to look for the triangle. So what does he do? He doesn't really stack him up and lean over. Instead, he postures up, and he stays in the guard, and he's starting to strike from farther away. That kept Yair Rodriguez out of trouble. But Brian Ortega is one tough son of a gun. If we know that anything from the Alexander Volkanovski and Max Holloway title shots, he can take a whooping. He took a whooping in round one. Now, like I said, we've touched on the elevation, and that kind of played, I think, into this fight. So Yair Rodriguez hurts Brian Ortega, and he continues to just go all out and try and finish this guy, finding the open side body kick and just pushing him around. And then round two comes out, and he is absolutely gassed. Brian Ortega's tough. Comes out. He's got one takedown in his UFC career up until this point. Go look it up on UFCstats.com. Brian Ortega has one takedown in his entire UFC career. Remember the Cub Swanson triangle? The flying triangle? Yeah, he had to jump for that. He couldn't... Anyways, so Brian Ortega gets him against the cage and pulls the leg out. And I'm like, whoa, what you doing, Brian Ortega? You been working on something new? And it looks like he has, actually. He kind of was working on cage wrestling, which is a major part of it. And as dreadful as he is at getting fights to the ground, it was good to see Ortega finally get the fight to the ground. Now, once he got Yair Rodriguez to the ground, he started to work on him. Little elbows here and there, punches, just staying on top. And you'll see he was in full guard, and he pushed the leg through to past the half where he can go and get some damage in. If an arm triangle showed its head or a darsh or something, he would be able to hop over and get that, which ultimately we know he would in round three. But you could tell by the end of round three, Yair Rodriguez was done. Round two, Yair Rodriguez is tired. So round three comes around, and very quickly, Ortega gets some body lock, pushes against the fence, pulls out the leg with a trip, takedown, and gets this arm triangle. We call it an arm triangle. If you go listen to Slacky's podcast, it's more of an Ezekiel choke from the rear, which was a little unique. I haven't studied on that too much yet, but yeah, so Brian Ortega, great win. As for Yair Rodriguez, same old problem he always has. The dude gets tired. The Alexander Volkanovski fight was kind of an exception to Yair Rodriguez's fighting style, not the rule. And we saw him go the distance almost there, whereas normally he gets tired in fights and gasses out. I believe that's how he let Jeremy Stevens back into a fight. I mean, any fight that he's had that's gone the distance, it's because, like, the Korean Zombie was washed. He even won that fight, but, like, the Korean Zombie was washed. and Rodriguez let Korean Zombie back into that fight. Now, we didn't know how bad Korean Zombie was at that point, but then you obviously know the famous up elbow. So, yeah, Yair Rodriguez, same exact problem he's always had, a gas tank, and it's terrible. And then you put this at altitude, the dude just gave up, and he had no choice, really. Brian Ortega's in half guard. He gets the arm triangle. He kind of punches at Yair to say, hey, I'm punching you in the face. Do something about it. And then he locks in that arm triangle. Goes off to the side as Yair Rodriguez says, oh, no, I need to get out of this. And he doesn't quite get out of it. He taps. Brian Ortega gets revenge after getting caught in an arm bar in the first fight, even though they called it an arm injury. Good fight. I really hope we're not giving Ilia Topuria Brian Ortega next, because we'll have a third picture of Brian Ortega getting beat up. And he might actually get iced this time instead of fighting Max and Alex, who's going to pitter-patter him. Ilia Topuria is going to hurt Brian Ortega. Please, I mean, if you want to make him a star, Ilia Topuria, that is, let him fight in Spain against Ortega and let him ice him. That'll be a highlight knockout. Another one for Ilia Topuria. If he were to knock out Brandon Ortega, that'd be wild. Wow. Last fight I want to talk about real quick was Raoni Barcelos versus Christian Quiones. This was the featured prelim. I'm a big Barcelos fan. Came into the UFC at 31 years old. So in the bantamweight division, he's in his prime at the end of it. He comes out and he's fighting Quiones, who's getting the best of him on the feet. And then he cheats. And cheats. And cheats. He grabs the fence like 3 times. He grabbed the shorts at one point and was giving him a wedgie. Nobody pointed that out, but that was there. He tried to knee a downed opponent. The crowd was booing him by the end of this. It was absolutely hilarious. The guy, he's a really good fighter. They call it a coral belt, so he's got the red belt. He's just very, very good at jiu-jitsu. Got very good counter striking. There was this one point to where he's in the clinch, and he steps behind the guy and pulls him over the leg, kind of peeking out. There's a judo term for that I don't know. Basically a dump. It was beautiful. I was like, wow, that was cool. And the guy's complete. He's an old savvy vet now. I think he's 34, 33, something like that. He's 1-4 in his last, and he was like a dangerous fighter for the longest time. And he got old in the division that you can't be old in. So really kind of worked against him. Anyways, guys, that's going to be it. Look, all the stuff down there, Substack, go right there. There's no premium content or anything like that, but if you want to throw $5 my way every month just to kind of, hey, I like your work, go sub to that. If not, just go drop your email. I post all my articles there. And then obviously on X, you can follow me there, where I just chat about fights all day. So yeah, I'll catch you guys on the next one.